I now recognize Ranking Member Huffman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I wish I had more time to get into this disparagement of renewables because your own state, Mr. Secretary, has 40% wind energy power in North Dakota nearby, and Iowa it's 60% plus.
We
wind.
have
In
40%.
My time, Mr. Secretary, 60% plus. Some of the lowest electricity rates, one of the most reliable grids in the country. So we could absolutely have a robust debate about some of the things you just said, but I want to ask you about this balance sheet philosophy, because you said nobody liquidates assets unless they're going out of business, but we've all seen corporate raiders like Carl Icahn build entire careers, taking over family-run businesses and raiding their employee pension funds. It happens all the time in private equity. But public lands should not be like that. And so I want to give you a chance to assure us that you're more like Teddy Roosevelt and less like Carl Icahn when it comes to managing our federal estate. You recently said that you, in your Senate testimony, that you were not proposing to sell off or divest any of the 63 so-called crown jewel national parks. But there are 370 other units managed by the national park system. These are places created by Congress that allow people across the country to get the national park experience in their own communities. They range from the MLK National Historical Park to Belmont Paul Women's Equality National Monument, Teddy Roosevelt Birthplace Historical Site, other beloved units that are critical to telling the American story. So simple yes or no, Mr. Secretary, will you allow the sale or divestiture of any of these units of the national park system to state, local, or private entities?
I can give examples of
Yes
where
or no, sir? It's a straight-up question.
I don't think it's a straight-up question. I thought you wanted to have a dialogue, but the dialogue...
I don't want a dialogue. I want a yes or a no.
Okay.
Will you allow any of those units to be sold or divested?
Well, thank you for being clear that you don't want a dialogue.
All right, I want a limited dialogue.
This is not a yes or no answer. I mean, you can ask me for a yes or no, but it's not a yes or no because this would require a thoughtful approach.
So I'm hearing, Mr. Secretary, that the sale or divestiture of some of those units is on the table. Is that fair?
Well, take Knife River Indian Village in North Dakota. Less than 1,000 visitors. We've got we have a superintendent. We have federal resources there.
Mr. Secretary, I'm just going to take that as a yes. I have limited time and more questions. So you have said that
But would you support us? The greatest gift we can give
I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to ask them, sir. So I know you said you're traveling the country listening to Park Service personnel.
I was attempting
I'm
to give
trying
you...
to get to a question. So
I'm
you said
attempting
you're
to give you
listening
an
to National
answer.
Park Service personnel. I want to ask you about Alcatraz, because I represent that park unit. There is no one in the National Park Service, from the superintendent down to the janitor, who would tell you turning Alcatraz into a federal prison again is a good idea. Will you listen to your Park Service personnel on subjects like that, or will you go along with Donald Trump when he proposes something crazy in order to try to stick it to Nancy Pelosi for political reasons? Yes or no?
Well, I work for the President of the United States, and the Park Service is part of the executive branch, and the Park Service reports up through the executive branch. So while we want to listen to everybody, frontline soldiers don't get to decide whether or not we go into war or not. I mean, you're asking a hypothetical question.
But isn't it your job to keep crazy, purely political things that are destructive to your agency off the table?
Well, it's completely subjective on a definition of how you're describing an idea.
Has anyone in the Park Service told you that's a good idea to reopen Alcatraz as a prison?
I'm happy to get consultation from locals, from National Park, whatever, but it's a pejorative in terms of where you're describing these ideas.
Sir, I really do hope you will listen to your Park Service personnel. Now, I want to ask you...
Is the Park Service personnel in charge of the decisions around the nation's resources?
I just hope you listen to them. You've said that you're doing a listening tour with them. I hope you will listen to them. Now, you have said that American public lands are assets that should be leveraged to pay down the national debt. Finance experts, including the former Republican director of the CBO, have said your proposal could only work if the U.S. entered into agreements with our foreign creditors to put specific lands up as collateral. I want to ask you specifically, because some of these creditors are China, Canada, France, India, Saudi Arabia, UAE. Will you put American public lands up as collateral in agreements with any of these foreign interests?
No, and the thing that you've just suggested has never been discussed, never been in a meeting with that, so I don't even know where that idea came from. There's not, you're talking about leverage, meaning debt, but we're talking about if we want to run advertisements to the American people and say, you own part of $36.5 trillion of debt, which we do every time we have a presidential campaign, we should also be running ads and say, Americans, you own part of a, $100 trillion, $200 trillion of
Sir,
assets?
you have repeatedly said we
The
should use our
gentleman's-
public lands
The
to
gentleman's
eliminate
time
the
has
national
expired.
debt.
Yes, because we're getting a horrifically poor return on the assets that we have in our country. If our national balance sheet's worth $100 trillion and Interior pulled in $20 billion, a 1% return on a $100 trillion balance sheet would be $1 trillion. We'd have all kinds of money for you guys to appropriate to spend on deferred maintenance. Our parks would be sustainable forever. These are simple things, but we've got the greatest resources: land, minerals, rare earth minerals, wind, solar. I mean, you name all the resources we have on public land. We're managing them in a way where we're getting really horrifically bad returns. And there's nothing contrary with getting good returns. I mean, some of the companies that have the highest return in the country are also the greatest stewards of the assets that they manage. We can do the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I hope we'll have a second round because this is too important to not
The
do
gentleman's
justice
time has
to this
expired.
issue.
The chair recognizes